What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao. Thanks for joining us for the news. Taiwan's main agency that oversees relations with China says that the anti-separatist guidelines issued by Beijing in June are hurting cross-strait exchanges. The Mainland Affairs Council says it will now block permits for certain Chinese officials coming to Taiwan unless they are coming to meet with the government here. Our reporter Jaime Ocon is following this story for us live in Taipei. Jaime, what did the council say?
Well, in an interview with the Central News Agency, the head of Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, Cho Cui-zeng, protested some of China's policies in which Beijing can label individuals in Taiwan as separatists without any clear reasoning. Now, he says that this is extremely damaging to normal cross-strait exchanges, raising antagonism between people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, increasing the personal risk of people traveling to the mainland. Cho also goes as far as saying that basically, if you do not support the Chinese Communist Party reunification policy, that you may be brought to justice. Now, the Mainland Affairs Council says it could refuse some permits from officials in China if they're looking to come to Taiwan, unless they're looking to speak with the government. Now, what Cho is referring to are these so-called 22 guidelines from China, in which were released back in June, which basically says that Beijing can charge anyone that they suspect as supporting or promoting Taiwanese independence, with the most severe consequence being the death penalty. Now, it's important to remember that China sees Taiwan as part of its own territory, and many observers say this is another way to put pressure on Taiwan. Right now, there's actually a website where you can see a list of people who have already been labeled as separatists, with the most prominent name on that list actually being Taiwan's current Vice President, Kim Xiao. Now, Cho's comments in that interview come just a few weeks after the Twin Cities Forum, which was held here in Taiwan, between representatives from Shanghai and Taipei. But most notably is that the head of the Shanghai Taiwan Affairs Office was not permitted to attend, and that caused a bit of a stir here in Taiwan, with both major political parties speaking out.
上海台办主任金梅申请来台湾的目的，其实就是要参加双城论坛。陆委会用抗议大陆惩毒22条，并且要求跟金梅会晤。陆委会是用大炮打小鸟，很显然就是无计可施、自嗨式的报复行为。
没有道理，他欺负、滥捕我们的台湾人民，我们还让这些背后的主使的一把手可以自由的进出台湾，这对台湾来讲不仅是不对等、不尊严，更是伤害台湾人民自由旅行的安全。
Now, this past year has been a bit of a roller coaster for relations between China and Taiwan, and so now all eyes are going to be on the New Year's speeches that both sides give. And of course, there's always going to be the wild card of Donald Trump returning to his presidency and his leadership, and what that could mean for relationships and engagement between both China and Taiwan.
Thanks for that explanation, Jaime. That was Jaime Ocon reporting from Taipei. Former presidential candidate Ko Wen-je, he is facing fresh challenges in his ongoing corruption case. The court has more than doubled his bail amount. Joyce Sung has more.
Former Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je's freedom is on the line again, just days after he was released on bail following 4 months in detention, indicted for corruption and embezzling political funds when he was head of the Taiwanese capital. Now, the High Court has sided with prosecutors, ruling to increase his bail sum from around $900,000 to over $2.1 million. And Ko was given less than 24 hours to pay the difference, facing renewed detention if he doesn't meet the 5 p.m. local time deadline on the 30th of December.
有逃亡、勾串、共犯或证人之余。
Like Ke, the other high-profile defendants involved in the case, namely Taipei City Councilor Angela Ying, real estate tycoon Shen Qingjing, and Ke's former mayoral office head Li Wenzong, have had their bail sums hiked up, and now they all must also wear trackers. Moments after the ruling, Ke was seen leaving his home for his lawyer's office. With just hours to make the payments, there is speculation that the doctor-turned-politician may have to sell or use his properties as collateral. Standing by their leader, members of Ke's Taiwan People's Party have begun raising funds among themselves, seeing the case against Ke as politically motivated.
今天对台湾民众党而言，只有一件事情是重要的，救出主席。
Ke has offered to resign as party leader, despite having founded this third-party force that has challenged the country's long-standing two-party system. Meanwhile, prosecutors say Ke's case is being handled in line with expectations, handing down one of the country's highest bail sums among politicians, which they say match the damage Ke has allegedly caused. Andy Xue and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Shortly before going to air, a representative for Ke provided the increased bail amount. Authorities are still processing it. Former Vice Premier Zheng Wen-san has appeared in court for a second time over corruption charges. Zheng is on trial for allegedly accepting bribes of more than $150,000 while serving as mayor of Taoyuan, and that's related to a development project in the city's technology park. Zheng has pleaded not guilty to those charges and says the case is a misunderstanding. Taiwan's Coast Guard has expressed concern over what new budget rules will mean for its funding. Under controversial new amendments passed by the legislature, central government funding is being slashed next year in favor of local governments. The Coast Guard says its budget could be cut by almost $90 million. It warns that this would impact its ability to build new ships, maintain existing ones, purchase new weapons, and protect Taiwan's waters. This all comes as China's Coast Guard has ramped up its own patrols. Families in South Korea are mourning the deaths of their loved ones after the deadliest plane crash in the country's history leaves the nation in shock. Wesley Lewis reports.
Heavy with grief, 71-year-old Jun Jae-young is mourning the loss of his daughter. Among the 179 confirmed dead on board Jeju Air Flight 2216 that crashed in South Korea's Mourn International Airport in the country's southwest.
40대 중반밖에 안 된 딸이 이렇게 됐으니까 나도 기가 막히고 진짜.
The Boeing 737 jet had traveled from the Thai capital Bangkok. Footage shows the aircraft veering down the runway and crashing into a wall before exploding upon collision. Officials have been investigating the cause of the crash, including landing gear malfunctions and possible bird strikes. The airport is on the path of migratory birds and has the highest rate of bird strikes in the country.
54분에 착륙 허가를 받고 1차 시도를 하다가 57분에 조류 이동 조언을 받고서 문제가 생겨서 이제 다시 재상승 복행을 했었습니다.
The runway here is also known to be almost a kilometer shorter than most international airports, and ongoing construction to lengthen it has been pointed out a potential obstruction during emergencies. But the Transport Ministry has downplayed this. Out of the 175 passengers and 6 crew on board, only 2 survivors, both crew members, were rescued from the tail of the plane. Jeju Airline executives and government officials have come out to offer condolences to the victims' families.
불의의 사고로 희생되신 분들의 명복을 빌며 유가족분들께 깊은 애도와 위로의 말씀을 드립니다. 국민의 안전과 생명을 책임지는 정부 수반의 대행으로서 이루 말할 수 없는 비통함과 송구한 마음입니다.
This crash is the deadliest ever on South Korean soil and comes at a time of deep political turmoil, just weeks after President Yoon Suk-yeol's brief imposition of martial law and his subsequent impeachment. There's a leadership vacuum at the airport too, with its management group lacking a CEO since April, some saying this has contributed to procedural lapses. For those here now, who had been eager to welcome their loved ones, the authorities have handed out DNA test kits to help in identifying remains. Now, the wait they face is agonizing, hoping for answers in the midst of mourning. Hank Xu and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
South Korean authorities are seeking an arrest warrant for impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. Law enforcement officials want to detain Yoon over his short-lived declaration of martial law early this month, a move that led the country's National Assembly to impeach him. Prosecutors are now investigating whether his actions amounted to a rebellion. Yoon has so far dodged requests to appear for questioning and has refused to step down. Under South Korean law, the president's home cannot be searched, which has stopped authorities from arresting him. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has blamed Russia for the fatal crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines passenger jet last week. Speaking to the country's state media, Aliyev called on Moscow to take accountability and apologize.
Rusya tərəfi Azərbaycandan üzr istəməlidir. İkinci, öz günahını etiraf etməlidir. Üçüncü, günahkarları cəzalandırmalıdır.
Aliyev also accused Moscow of initially trying to cover up the cause of the crash. Azerbaijani officials have suggested that the aircraft was hit by a Russian air defense system while it was traveling to Grozny in southern Russia. Now, that area has been targeted by Ukrainian drone strikes in recent weeks. Russian President Vladimir Putin reportedly apologized to Aliyev in a phone call, but he did not accept blame for the incident. Both countries have called for further investigation. Residents in New Taipei are pushing back against plans to demolish a centuries-old house next to the city's bygone canal system. They argue that what remains of the historic neighborhood deserves government protection. Wesley Lewis reports.
Lai Bijun and her family have lived in this home in New Taipei for 4 generations. It's now surrounded by towering apartment blocks. But the centuries-old house has stood the test of time, alongside a historic canal system called Liugongjun that hasn't. And though one of the few remaining canals is right by the Lai family home, the house itself may not be here for much longer. A recent development proposal could see it demolished.
其实不是只有我焦灼，还有更多就是对文史的爱好者，更希望把整个新店溪这个仅存刘公郡的，应该是最后的一块处女地，要把它保留下来吧。
Much of Liugongjun dates back to the 18th century, built during Qing Dynasty rule in Taiwan, to serve the area's residents and farmers. Once a vast network of crisscrossing waterways that spread across the Taipei Basin, Liugongjun's wide canals and irrigation ditches have all but disappeared. Many of these waterways were filled in for roads like this one in the 1970s. The most intact and exposed section is in New Taipei's Xingdian district. Local historians give educational tours here. They argue for granting Liugongjun cultural heritage status.
那今天如果说我们把它变成一个文化资产，它就是有经费可以维护嘛。一个文化资产，它就变成有权责单位在管理。
Ms. Lai and several New Taipei civic groups agree. They have held rallies urging the government to give Liugongjun cultural landscape status, assigned to historically significant man-made environments.
守护柳公圳，守护柳公圳，登录文化景观，登录文化景观，审议透明，审议透明。
The government has scheduled 2 inspections of Ms. Lai's house and of Liugongjun to consider whether the area merits the protected status.
我想我们今天如果提报文化景观，那我们会成立文化资产的保存会议的会刊跟会议。那后续我们会请专家学者来进行会刊。那会刊的部分，我们如果确定它具文化景观的保存价值，我们就会进行列车追踪。
For now, Ms. Lai waits for the government to decide her fate. She says she remains resolved to continue fighting for not only her right to keep her family home, but also for the preservation of her neighborhood's unique and enduring history. Klein Wang, Kama Xu, and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
And thank you for joining us for What's Up Taiwan. Head over to our website to see more of our news stories and other programs. Finally, we leave you with images of what's known as Africa's biggest street party. It's been held for 20 years now in the city of Calabar in Nigeria. I'm Eric Gao. Take care. I'll see you later.